Welcome to this episode of the OTTRED Spotlight Podcast. As most of you will know, during the course of my day-to-day work, I'm lucky enough to come across multiple super talented people who work at all levels in all walks of the streaming, media and digital entertainment sector. We've recently explored different side avenues of what the sector represents in terms of companies like Anuvu, who focus on content into the aviation sector, and the interview that I did with Felix from 3SS, who are focused now on the automotive sector. Today we're going to be shining a light on another huge area of the OTT and streaming industry, which is the B2B arena. Rachelle Peterson is here in the studio joining me, who is a B2B OTT expert. Rachelle, welcome to the OTT Spotlight Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
Rachelle, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I have to say that in the research that I've done, in running up to this podcast, realizing what the gravity is just in terms of some of the numbers commercially when it comes to the size of the market, when it comes to the B2B OTT sector within the sector is absolutely unbelievable. And you've had some roles within your career where they've really established you as somebody that's got immense gravity in the pedigree of your career when it comes to this part of the arena that we operate in. But just set the stage for us, Rachelle. If nobody's ever heard of B2B OTT before, or if they're struggling to get to terms with exactly what those acronyms might mean, set the stage for us. What is B2B OTT?
Okay, so basically the B2B space in for media, and that's a very wide sort of sector, right? So you're looking at anything outside the home. So you've got your residential customers when you're a telco or a media company, and then anything that falls outside of that residential space is B2B. So you're talking hotel rooms, airlines, cruise ships, pubs and bars, stadias, shopping malls, vacation homes. All of those markets are fall under the banner B2B. I cannot tell you how massive it is. Yes, absolutely. And of course, the travel markets are sort of synonymous, right? Because all of this stuff that you take with you, your mobile phone, you take your content with you. And then when you arrive at your destination, you may want to relax because you've just had a really, really long flight and you just want to relax because you're on holiday and you just want to watch something. All of that falls under B2B distribution.
In the 20 years that you've occupied this space, you must have seen it change and transform so much, especially in the last 5 years with the prevalence of the device ecosystem and the common sharing of data. What are the major changes that you've seen within that period? Absolutely.
But the interesting bit is that when I was growing up, and I'm going to show my age. When I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, when you were going to a hotel and you were lucky to go with your family, with your parents to a hotel, coming from Amsterdam, we had 2 TV channels at home, right? Holland 1, Holland 2, that was it. When we were going to Spain on holiday or France or whatever, and you were going into a hotel, there was all these like TV channels, all of these movies, and like what you had in a hotel was so much better than what you had at home. That of course all changed. Because now the hotels are much slower. They've been much slower to adopt the way you're adopting into your sort of normal day to day. So now when I go home and I go and see my family, they have 200 channels. They've got movie channels. They've got whatever they want to watch. They almost have too much. But that's not the case in hotels. So now they went from a far better content proposition that they used to have to a far poorer content proposition that they have now. And a lot of it in that space is still based on good old linear. Just having a linear feed in a hotel room going into the box. Absolutely. Hotels now realize that they need to move on with the times, not just from a own device point of view, but also from a TV point of view. The TV in the room have a life cycle of sort of 7 to 10 years. So now we're starting to see that any new build, very clear, they're all smart TVs. But even older hotels that are refurbing, they're all now going to smart TVs. And so that digital space becoming more.
We'll
and
get
more
into the
important.
nuances when it comes to the differences in regions around the world and what they demonstrate and mean to your
Yes.
sector of the market. But I want to talk about some of the numbers and the colossal size of the amount of revenue that's generated in B2B OTT. You were most recently
Correct.
SVP at DAZN. You've also worked at CNN on the global stage. You worked at Turner. It's amazing to me that for such a niche part of the market, the numbers are so huge, but there's not many people that actually work in this part of the market.
Not at all. I mean, I work at CNN, which is arguably the biggest brand in the B2B space, right? You cannot go to a hotel, any hotel of any, without having CNN, usually as the first sort of channel that you have on your TV system. But I was running the global distribution team, the international team with 6 people. And so, same at DAZN. It's a very small, especially from a global perspective. Once you start looking locally, so at DAZN, very clearly, because it's sports, there are very big differences between local and between global. So when you're looking at sort of sports in the sort of pub and bar arena, that's all managed locally. You wouldn't be able to do that from London or from a spot. But when you're talking about the travel markets and hospitality markets, you're talking to the likes of the Marriotts and the Hiltons and the American Airlines. Those types of businesses are all run globally. Yes, there are local nuances, of course. The Middle East have their own that's our own region, right? But it's still managed for a large part by the US head office.
That's exactly what I mean. Every deal's big. Even a small deal is a huge deal if you look at what the total contract value is compared to other deals within the market.
So it is a combination of very, very large deals, super, super large deals, and very small deals. So, you can go to a local hotel chain with maybe 4 or 5 hotels, and that will be, in right here in the UAE, and that may be a small deal, and it's still worth doing. But of course, where the money is to go with your international hotel chains, especially in the 4 and 5 star markets, where they need to attract the traveler. So those are the deals that, if you can do a global deal, that's the best bit. And then you start looking at regional.
Okay. Give me some numbers, Rachelle. How big is this market?
Okay. So there are 18, and it doesn't actually sound like that much, right? So there's 18 million hotel rooms worldwide. Give or take.
1.8. Okay.
Million. Doesn't really sound like a lot. Most of those hotel rooms are in the US and Greater China. So when you're looking at the UAE, because that's where we are right now, we're looking at about 215,000 hotel rooms in Dubai. Now, in the UAE, Dubai is full of hotels. So that sounds like a very small opportunity, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, even for content. The Middle East is so key to the pipeline of hotels and hospitality, because when you're looking at Saudi, for instance, Saudi has the largest number of hotels in the pipeline in the world, right? 320,000 hotel rooms are being built between now and 2030.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
The entire number of hotel rooms in the UAE is 200,000.
Yeah, the whole UAE. So that includes Abu Dhabi and Sharjah and everywhere in the UAE.
Entire legacy build ever.
Yeah.
And between now and 2030, they're going to build 320,000 hotel rooms in Saudi Arabia.
The opportunity is massive. Absolutely massive. And then, a lot of this is facilitated by projects such as Red Sea Project and NEOM specifically. But the amount of revenue that flows through this industry is it's phenomenal. And if you're not doing things now, you're too late. They already are preparing everything now. And once it's in, it's in. So now is where the opportunity is. Now you need to start looking at your strategy, your B2B strategy. What am I, as a telco, as an OTT player, what am I going to do in this space? You know, is it fit for purpose? Do we need to make changes? How are we going to do it? What are the partnerships that we need to strike? It is so worth it, but it needs to be done before it really hits that critical mass.
I'd imagine sales life cycles can be extremely protracted. What's an average sales life cycle in B2B OTT?
So contracts tend to be fairly long. Contracts tend to be, you know, sort of, everything depends, right? But you're looking at, there used to be sort of 7 years. The life cycle of a television in a hotel is probably 7 to 10 years. It is sometimes at odds with, especially since I've just done sports for the last sort of, year or so. And the sports rights, you get 3 years if you're really lucky. And that is sort of totally out of sync with the life cycle. But when you're looking at entertainment, a lot of that, that fits in quite well. So it just depends on the type of content and then also the type of hotel. But the partnerships that you strike tend to be longer term. Yeah.
You enlightened me earlier off camera when it comes to content acquisition strategies and how they can be quite dramatically different in the B2B space. Unpack that for me, Rachelle. How are they different when it comes to content acquisition for B2B?
If you want to be a major player in the B2B space, because you get excited by, as I am, because I love this space so much. But if you want to be a major player, whether you're an aggregator or whether you have originals, it's not the content. So in the Middle East, it's not necessarily the Arabic content that you would be wanting to purchase, right? Because yes, you may go from Dubai to Riyadh, and you may, but what you really want to attract is that international traveler. So your content needs to. You need to purchase your content based on the traveler in that particular hotel chain. So if you are a hotel owner and you've got, I don't know, for the sake of argument, 50 hotels in the Middle East, and you are looking at your channel lineup on your TV, you need to have Chinese content, Russian content. You need to have English content. You need to have Arabic content, but your largest sort of content acquisition would be that plays to the widest possible audience. So a lot of it would be in English, but then you also want to look at your guest profile and say, okay, well, I'm a business hotel and I have a lot of guests coming in specifically that speak Russian or specifically that speak Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. So you make sure that you cater to that specific guest so that they feel included and welcomed. So if you're looking to make a splash in this space, you need to understand and you need to do your partnerships really well. Everything is about partnerships and knowing who you know within this industry and looking at the different partners that you team up with.
I'm really interested in your view and feeling about how the industry and your part of the industry might change. You spoke about the fact that previously this part of the market was largely purely down to a signal feed. And now we're talking about much different set of features when it comes to what the proposition is. We're talking about a device ecosystem. We're talking about things like the whole traveler experience. In fact, you've got a term that you use, which is traveler ecosystem. Help me understand what you mean by that, Rachelle. What is a traveler ecosystem?
So let's say you're a traveler. You're going on a business trip. the minute your business trip starts, the minute you pull the door, your front door behind you, and you go into your Uber or your taxi or your Careem, and you go on your way to the airport, you are engaged with content from the moment you sit down in that car to the airport. In the airport, you have screens. Either it's your own screen, or it is the screen that is provided by the lounge, or the screens that are provided by the gate. There's content there. So you engage with content there. Then you get on a plane. On the plane, there's not a lot to do when you get on a plane, right? You can eat, sleep, or watch something. That's about it. It is a perfect way to showcase your content if you are a content provider. So then you're on the plane, and then on the other side, it's exactly the same journey. But the same thing is with a cruise ship, or, on the hotel side, it's literally moving. It's like that traveler experience from door to door and then back again.
Do you think that the potential of that horizon is recognized by these hotels that are acquiring these propositions?
No, but they're getting better at it. They're getting better at it because the data that they get from their TVs, the data that they get from their Wi-Fi partners is such that they can see how that plays. So they're getting better at it, and they're getting better at purchasing what is right for their guests. And so it is up to the OTT player or the media company to sort of have those conversations with, CTOs of hotel groups. And that's hard, right? Because don't forget that a hotel, they're not interested in the content. They're interested in making their guests happy, right? Honestly, a hotelier is more interested in the shampoo that they have in the bathrooms for their guests than they are for the content that they have on the TV, right?
To be competing with the limit.
Exactly. You are competing with the linen in that instance. But something needs to change, because to have an experience as a traveler that is worse than I had as a girl in the 70s and 80s is not good enough. Not in this digital space that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're missing out on something. You're missing out on making that guest feel comfortable. And yes, we can bring our own content with you, and people still do, but there is still something to be said for casting something on the TV that you've got on your mobile, right? So that you can finish that TV series that you started when you're on the plane. But not everyone is tech savvy. I mean, my parents travel an awful lot. They're not tech savvy. They want to be able to turn the TV on and just pick something exactly. So you need to cater for, the young kids that are just, interested in TikTok on YouTube. But you also need to cater to the guests that may want to watch something that, that on the TV. You need to cater to a huge audience, and you just need to do it in a very, very smart way. So yeah.
I've just thought it's never felt more appropriate that this studio is located in a hotel, just looking at some of the traffic
I know
that we've got going past. I'm just thinking of the people whose desk the check arrives at for your services, and the fact that you said that they're just interested in delighting their customers. Is that true, or are they also interested in their opportunity for monetization?
Of course. I mean, listen, to have a space where it's just a cost center, that's never going to delight anyone. So, to come up with different ways to, get into a profit center rather than a cost center is key. So if you can come up with a way, and of course we can now, to, advertising, or where you can just say to the CTO, yes, content costs money, you will have to write a check. However, there are ways of generating revenue as well through revenue shares, and there's lots of different ways to do it.
I was going to ask you about ad insertion.
Yeah.
It strikes me, especially here in Dubai, with the huge hotels that we have.
Yeah.
Most people get out of the taxi, arrive at the lobby of the hotel. They have to queue up to check in if you're still at a level where you need to queue up, like I am. And the first thing that they do is log on to the Wi-Fi. And as soon as you do that, that hotel knows that you're there, that you're addressable as a target. And for these huge campuses, that's potential advertising for the retail outlets within that location.
Funnily enough, so this is a bit. So I, together with some of my ex-colleagues at CNN, that's exactly what they do, right? They monetize the Wi-Fi in hotel spaces through advertising. It is so interesting how it's very slow to adopt, and I think that is very true of that whole industry because it's not their core focus. It is really difficult, and it takes a long time for a hotel owner to say, this is really key. This is really, I get this now. I understand it now. Because it's not their core focus. So it is constantly you have to constantly repeat the same conversations over and over and over until it just sort of clicks. But the opportunity is out there. It's there. You just need to, someone needs to really go after it.
I feel like I might know the lady for the job. Let's talk about other targets as well, because earlier you mentioned retail, malls, hospitals as well might be a legitimate target.
Huge. Hospitals, like airlines, right? Like airplanes, it's an audience that is captive. Unfortunately, when you are in hospital, you're there for a certain period of time. There's not much to do. Again, it's that captive audience, and hospitals are absolute key to this space. But retirement homes, which are, funnily enough, considered to be the same as your home, because it's sort of communal living. So it's more seen as a hotel than it is a home. All of those sort of spaces, malls, airports, all of that falls under that B2B space. There are differences very clearly in something that you watch in a bar or a pub or a sort of communal space, and something that you watch in a room or a cabin, like you would do on a cruise ship or in a hotel room, where you control the content, versus a manager, or whether that's a bar manager or the shopping mall control the content for you. So there are big differences there, but it all falls under the same space.
Knowing how many years you've been in this space and how well established you are as well, I feel quite confident that you must have ideas all of the time of different things that could be done here, there, everywhere, different technologies that could be used in the space, and the application of those technologies. What are some of the more innovative ideas that you have had, or technologies that you've seen?
So everything is going app-based now. And so, having that sort of B2B app, rather than changing something that you already have, because there's different functionality that you would need for a B2B app in a hotel room than you would do at home, right? There are certain applications that you do not need. Recommendations, you don't need it. And having different monetary sort of ways of generating revenue. So going from a vault to you can still do a subscription, but advertising models are really sort of up and coming. So it depends on where you are. So it's region specific. And what the appetite is of the partners that you're working with. And I think that is key, is that it's not just a deal that you do with a hotel. It is a deal that you do with the integrator, the system integrator, with the TV provider, with the Wi-Fi solution, sometimes with other third-party partners. And it's those types of partnerships that are the most amount of fun, because it is something that you're just creating something entirely new.
One of the things that I always think of is second screen opportunities.
Absolutely huge, because I don't know about you, but it drives my husband crazy. We will be watching a movie at home or in a hotel, and I will be with my mobile playing Candy Crush. But there is so much that you can do with that second screen, and it gets forgotten about a lot of the time. And I think one of the things is that if you are a telco or an OTT player and the B2B space is less than 5% of your overall total revenue, it seems insignificant, right? And there's no focus on it. That's a big mistake. Big mistake. Because that 5% that you now have could grow. I can tell you that from a distribution point of view at CNN, the B2B space is bigger than the residential space in international. And the reason for that is that it's an English-speaking channel. And so I've grown up in Holland. My parents do not watch CNN at home. They don't. The minute they travel, because they know it, CNN becomes their channel of choice.
Yeah, it's mine as well. It's my staple diet when I'm traveling for business.
Exactly. They never watch it at home, ever. They go and watch the local news, right? But the minute they travel, that's it.
Huge numbers, massive numbers. I won't even ask you, but I can imagine it's many, many, many millions. I want to ask you, I've known you for a few years, Rachelle, and you've been in this space for a long time, but I actually feel that you're more ignited and enthusiastic now about this space than ever. What are the things that still keep that ignition button pushed when it comes to your enthusiasm for this space?
Oh, I love it. It's great. Listen, I'm in Dubai this week. I love to talk. But I love to talk about this type of industry. And I came here for a conference, and, I do moderating and panels, and I always try and bring that B2B business into a panel. I know the panels are not about me when I moderate, but there is so much left to do. There is so much revenue to be made of this industry. There's so many new technological advances that we still need to look at. It's constantly evolving.
Do you think this region's got more appetite compared to other regions when it comes to those technological advances?
They're a bit slow still. They're still relying on old technologies. But you can't do that. When you're seeing what's happening in Saudi with NEOM, you cannot put an old system in there. You've got to work with the times. You've got to start looking at diversification as a means of generating new incomes. So you're looking at partnerships, you're looking at technology. Make sure your tech stack is spot on for this sort of industry that you're in. Once you got those things right, sky's the limit.
Yeah. This, like so many other topics, I was going to talk about the opportunity to get data, but actually when you think about the hotels, the malls, hospitals,
yeah,
they've already generally got that data about the occupants of that location. I feel like the context of this is more about their opportunity to perpetuate or propagate the ability to make that into a commercial advantage.
Yeah, the one thing you do have to keep in mind, though, is that, especially in the hospitality world, the hospitality and travel markets, they do business with people that they know and trust. So a big mistake can be made when, you've got a name of a CTO. I mean, it's very easy, right? You go on LinkedIn and you get your CTO name of Marriott and you try and reach out. Doesn't work that way. Because like going to conferences, like going to specific hotel related conferences and things, that's where you need to have a relationship with this company. They will not, it's not the way it works. You cannot just go to a CTO and say, this is what I do, this is what, can we do an agreement?
Do you want to buy it?
No, it doesn't work that way. They will, like I said, they are more interested in the shampoo in the shower than they are in the content. It takes years and years of honing relationships, of never messing up, of always being available. I can call people at Hilton and IHG and Marriott and Radisson and say, hi, it's Rachelle. I've got something really exciting. Can we have a chat? They will pick up the phone. But it's taken me 20 years to get there, right? And so it's a world that they do business with people that they know and they're friendly with, not off the cuff, because unlike another content company. So when you're looking at residential and you're doing a deal with, YouTube, or you're doing a deal with Apple or with Samsung, those are people in the content game, right? They're in the content game. It's in their best interest. A hotel or an airline or a cruise ship, they're not in the content game. Content is actually a cost center that they could do without. So you need to explain to them that it's to their benefit. And that takes time, right? They're not going to just pick up that phone and say, yeah, I'm going to write you a check. They will only do that, when they know you, they understand the content, they can see that it works. Nothing is done on a promise. Everything is done on, show me. Let me play with the product. Let me look at that product. Let me try and break the product, right? Because a guest complaints are a death sentence. So they will not do anything until it's been tried and tested again and tested for the third time.
Kick the hell out of it and see if you can break it.
Yeah.
Having this conversation with you today has made me feel similarly to when I started looking into the aviation side of our sector and realized that how much content is purchased. For example, Emirates is one of the biggest organizations for purchasing of content in the world.
Qatar Airways will probably have something to say about that, but yes, they are.
Not just the amount, but how frequently they purchase as well. If you look at all of the different languages, all of the different genres.
Well, the funny thing is that the Middle East is huge, right? So the three biggest airlines for content are Turkish, Emirates, and Qatar Airways.
Massive. I mean, unless you're in the industry, I suppose that people just wouldn't think that airlines are that kind of company, but it just makes sense.
It really does. And the same thing counts for cruise, right? It's a huge market. But you need to understand that you cannot just go to Carnival and say to Carnival, hi, it's me, this is my content, which you purchase. Doesn't work that way. It gets done by agencies. There are always third and fourth parties involved. So there is a whole system basically that needs to be understood before you can then go and make use of this sort of market.
Final question for you, Rachelle. Is there any emerging markets in this space that are something totally new, something totally different to what already exists?
Well, you mentioned automotive, right? I love the automotive space. The content in automotive space is really interesting. And I was listening to the podcast that you did with 3SS earlier. And absolutely correct. The right situation is very, very tricky when you have moving vehicles. That counts for, automotive, but also for airlines and cruise, right? When something is moving from A to B, it is always more difficult. So that's a market is very, very exciting. And, that is a huge space, the automotive industry. Other industries, just the whole travel market, it is underutilized. There are deals to be done in that space. The pipeline, like I mentioned in Saudi, is so big. and there is so much money being poured into the travel and tourism industry in Saudi that it's a logical step for companies to want to be in on that game. So sky's the limit in these markets. But yeah, I mean, everything is going to go digital at some point. Even the sort of people that are resisting, the hotels that are resisting, right? Because they have to make investments into that space, which no one wants to make investments. And we just come out of COVID where everything stood still. But I think now is the time when COVID is behind us. People are looking at reinvesting in travel and tourism. Now is the time for media companies to take a look at their B2B strategy. Take a really good look and see what needs to change, because it needs to change. We cannot have old linear feeds anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the whole sector at the moment is at a massive point of transformation. I mean, if you just look at the automotive sector, for example, and in-car experience, what that represents.
Yeah.
And then there's a multitude of other different transformational areas across the sector at so many different levels as well.
Yeah, and that is B2B, right? Because you're outside the home. So it falls under the B2B space. For media companies, it falls outside of, the home. So definitely that's the one to watch.
Rachelle, I know that you're in Dubai for a limited period of time, and I just want to say that it means so much to me that you've come all the way out here to Dubai Silicon Oasis, to Radisson Red and Studio Red, to speak to us. I hope that everybody watching on LinkedIn Live, watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts will get as much value from this conversation as I genuinely have got. And I just want to extend my sincere thank you for being a guest on the OTTRED Spotlight podcast.
Absolute pleasure. It's been a highlight of my trip. One of the highlights of my trip. It's been great. It's been really, really fun. Thank you.